Hey guys, I want to give a quick glimpse here at some of the illustrations from the Non-Designer's Design book, Chapter 1 on proximity. And simply put, as Williams writes, the principle of proximity states to group related items together, move them physically close to each other, uh, so that the related items are seen as one cohesive group rather than a bunch of unrelated bits. She illustrates this, I hope, as you have seen in your own copies, through business cards pretty effectively, where I think new designers often want to fill up the entire space, so there was part of an address in one corner, another part of the address in a different corner, telephone number in the lower left corner, and so on, the name in the middle. But grouping items that belong together, putting them close together, is done partly through putting space between the groups that don't go together. So on this screen, if you look, correspondences, quotes on motifs, language, and collections on the left side, that's all uniformly single spaced between those four different groups. And on the right, she has simply put space between each of the groups and tightened the space within each group. I'm going to share with you the PowerPoint, so if you have trouble reading the print here on this screen, you'll be able to see it and zoom in on your computer through the PowerPoint. At the lower portion of the page here, I have highlighted, it is critical that you learn to use the paragraph space before and after settings in your software. And we'll look at that here in just a minute as well. The second example here is a flyer, the one on the left-hand side, all centered for one thing, but uniformly just hitting the Enter key to put one typed space between each of the different elements. And she's made some other design adjustments as well in the one on the right. She's given contrast through highlighting the headings. She has given left alignment. But by pulling the related items together, the sentences in bold, how would you like to? Can you imagine? And putting the continuations of those ellipses, pressing those together instead of having space trapped between the heading and each item, draws those units together as they belong. It separates and organizes them through the white space between them. And as she notes in her explanation on this page, by condensing, but with these adjustments, she has now created more space on the page as a whole, which allows for a larger illustration, which is more engaging. Here's an example that she found. This is apparently from an actual restaurant, and if you want to see something like this, you can go to, I've noticed, I'm not picking on anybody, but in the Macon area, at least in my part of town, there are two Chinese restaurants that have their menus pasted on the windows, and they look very much like this. I don't know that they're all caps, but so they've divided the sections here by underlining and putting in bold the top starters, entrees, but then it's all caps. It's just a mishmash. It's hard to make sense of. And if you've seen menus like that, I'll bet you don't read. It's hard to scan. It's hard to look for the section you want. Me, I just find something like, oh, look, there's an enchilada. I think I'll go with that. But she improves that here. She's done some other things in design here too, with alignment, with fonts and contrast. But here she has grouped things more clearly. Starters and entrees are now separated in space. They're separated through alignment, the fact that those are different categories, and then the items within them are brought closer together. And if you go back and look at the previous one, you can't tell just at a glance, but some of these items have the description of what the item is. And on this version, so the item, what it is in bold, and then the description is in the smaller font beneath. But proximity, bringing the things that belong together and putting space between the things that go together and those that are unrelated. I'm putting here the summary that she gives of this point. I'm not going to read it here, and I don't expect you to read it on the screen, but in the PowerPoint you'll have this to look at if you don't have the book yet. Now we're going to take a quick glance at the spacing before and after a paragraph feature in Microsoft Word that Williams noted in the one passage I drew your attention to. A couple of ways. This is uniformly, the headings here are 14 point and the text is 12 point, and they're just a typed space using the enter key between paragraph and heading and heading and paragraph. So I'm going to highlight this one heading in the middle. I'm going to go up here to this icon for line and paragraph spacing and choose line spacing options. Before, these usually default to automatic. I'm going to make, for illustration, I'm going to make the before 18 point. And I'm going to make the after, let's make that 0 point. And if you look on screen, you'll see a slight change. And then for the paragraph of text following that heading, I'm going to, and another way you can get to the line spacing tool, as you probably know, right-click select, right-click, choose paragraph, and then line spacing or spacing here before. Here for the text of the paragraph, we'll try a couple of different things. We'll start with 0 before the paragraph and see what that does. That brings it up right under it, which maybe that's the look that you would want. If we go back and let's make it 3 this time, it defaults to the number 6 there, but you can change it to, it's scalable however you want. If you see I put 3 points there, it's clearly not just the standard spacing. If you think that's a little too close, then maybe highlight again. Excuse me. Choose paragraph, line spacing. Let's go up to the 6 point. And there, say, okay, so looking at these 3 paragraphs, you can see that the middle one is closer to the text. That looks a little bit more professional than just having, and if you've gotten it to where you like it, if you select this text, you can choose Format Painter, and you can change all the headings throughout the document to that same setting. Same thing, you could Format Painter the paragraphs of text there and adjust them all together too. So if you see here, I mean, that's a fairly notable, it's a subtle thing, but it's a noticeable difference, having the additional space before the headings, less space between the heading and the paragraph. So do play around with that tool. It's, I mean, it may be confusing at first if you haven't done it before, but it's a big step in making your work look more professional. Okay, well, that's it for this segment.